Most people think Starship Troopers is just a dumb action movie about killing giant bugs. Most people are wrong. The director never finished reading the book. He found it too boring and too right-wing to stomach.
What makes you think you're good enough?
The cast was nicknamed Doogie Himmler and dressed in Nazi uniforms on purpose, and the studio accidentally marketed a brilliant anti-fascist satire as a pro-military blockbuster.
Join the army, it's great, you know.
Critics called it neo-Nazi propaganda. They completely missed the joke. Today, we're exposing 14 hidden truths behind Starship Troopers.
Don't be afraid.
1. The director couldn't finish the book. Paul Verhoeven, the Dutch director hired to adapt Robert A. Heinlein's classic science fiction novel, famously admitted he couldn't get past the first few chapters. He found the book too boring, too right-wing, too militaristic to stomach. So he did something outrageous. He stopped reading and asked screenwriter Ed Neumeier to just tell him what happened. Verhoeven had no interest in faithfully adapting Heinlein's vision of heroic soldiers defending humanity. He wanted to subvert the entire thing, turn the source material inside out to create a vicious satire of fascism and military propaganda. The irony is that most audiences had no idea they were watching a deliberate parody. Many Heinlein fans were furious that Verhoeven had ruined their beloved book without even bothering to finish it. He didn't care. That was the point. 2. Bug Hunt on Outpost 9. Here's the twist most people don't know. Starship Troopers didn't even start as an adaptation of Heinlein's novel. The original screenplay, written by Ed Neumeier, was called Bug Hunt on Outpost 9, a completely original story about soldiers fighting alien insects on a distant planet. When the producers at Sony realized how similar the script was to Heinlein's book, Soldiers, Bugs, Interstellar War, they made a calculated business decision. Rather than risk a lawsuit from the Heinlein estate or waste a marketable intellectual property, they licensed the rights to Starship Troopers and retroactively turned Bug Hunt into an official adaptation. It was a cynical move that allowed them to capitalize on the brand recognition of a famous science fiction novel while making a movie that had almost nothing to do with the source material's themes or politics. The adaptation was an accident. The satire was intentional. 4. Doogie Himmler. Neil Patrick Harris's character, Carl Jenkins, spends most of the movie as a goofy psychic intelligence officer. Then, in the final act, he shows up wearing a long black leather trench coat that looks disturbingly similar to a Nazi SS officer's uniform. The resemblance wasn't accidental. It was a deliberate choice by Verhoeven to make the audience uncomfortable and force them to question who the real villains of the story were. Because of the costume's striking similarity to Third Reich regalia, the crew started jokingly referring to Harris as Doogie Himmler, a nickname that stuck throughout production. Harris, still best known for playing a teenage doctor on a wholesome sitcom, found the whole thing darkly hilarious. But the costume design was part of Verhoeven's larger plan to blur the line between heroes and fascists. Most audiences completely missed the point. 5. 300,000 rounds of ammo. At the time of its release, Starship Troopers reportedly set a record for the most blank ammunition ever used in a single film. The production burned through over 300,000 rounds during the massive battle sequences. Soldiers firing endlessly at CGI bugs that didn't exist on set. The sheer volume of gunfire was so extreme that the sound mixers had to layer dozens of different weapon tracks just to create the chaotic wall of noise that defines the film's combat scenes. The constant shooting created a logistical nightmare. The armory department had to coordinate. Deliveries of blank ammo like they were supplying a real military operation. Actors had to be trained in proper firearm safety to avoid accidents. It was absurd excess that perfectly matched Verhoeven's vision of war as a meat grinder where human life is cheap and bullets are infinite. 6. The satire that fooled everyone. This is the most important thing to understand about Starship Troopers. It's now recognized as one of the most brilliant satires of fascism and military propaganda ever made. When it was first released, almost no one got the joke. Sony's marketing department sold the film as a straightforward action movie for teenagers, giant bugs, explosions, beautiful people in uniforms, and completely ignored the satirical subtext. When critics saw the film, they were horrified. Many called it pro-Nazi. They accused Verhoeven of glorifying fascism. They labeled it dangerous neo-Nazi propaganda. What they didn't understand was that Verhoeven grew up in Nazi-occupied Netherlands. He witnessed the horrors of fascism firsthand. He was mocking the very imagery he was using, holding up a mirror to American militarism and daring audiences to see themselves in the reflection. It took years for people to realize they'd been fooled. By then, the damage to the film's reputation was already done. 7. Casper Van Dien's bloody stunt. During the scene where Johnny Rico jumps onto the back of a massive tanker bug, Casper Van Dien insisted on doing his own stunt instead of using a double. He launched himself through the air and landed hard on the creature rig. The impact was far more brutal than anyone expected. Van Dien cracked several ribs and chipped 2 teeth on the landing. He later admitted he was coughing up blood between takes, but he refused to stop filming. He was so committed to finishing the sequence that he powered through the pain and completed the scene before finally seeking medical attention. It's the kind of reckless, borderline stupid commitment that action stars use to pride themselves on. It nearly killed him. The footage made it into the final film. Audiences had no idea they were watching an actor who was genuinely injured and bleeding internally. 8. Real-life heat stroke. The production filmed many of the outdoor battle sequences in a location called Hell's Half Acre in Wyoming. The name was disturbingly accurate. Temperatures regularly topped 120 degrees Fahrenheit, turning the set into a literal oven where cast and crew were slowly baking inside their tactical gear and body armor. The conditions were so brutal that actor Jake Busey suffered severe heat stroke and had to be hospitalized. The entire production shut down for a week so everyone could recover. Multiple other cast members collapsed from dehydration. Medics on set were constantly distributing water and ice packs to prevent more casualties. It was a grueling, dangerous shoot that pushed everyone to their physical limits. It's a miracle no one died. The misery shows on screen. The soldiers looked genuinely exhausted and desperate, because they were. 9. Shot-for-shot Nazi propaganda. The propaganda clips that punctuate Starship Troopers, the cheerful "Would you like to know more?" recruitment ads, and the Federal Network news broadcasts weren't just generic military propaganda. They were explicit, shot-for-shot parodies of Triumph of the Will. That's Leni Riefenstahl's infamous 1935 Nazi propaganda film that glorified Hitler and the Third Reich. Paul Verhoeven studied Riefenstahl's techniques obsessively. He copied her camera angles, her lighting, her editing rhythms, her use of heroic imagery to manipulate audiences. His goal was to see if he could make modern viewers root for fascists without them realizing what they were doing. The experiment worked too well. Most audiences cheered for the mobile infantry and didn't recognize they were being fed the same propaganda techniques that the Nazis used to justify genocide. It was a dangerous gamble that proved how susceptible people are to manipulation. 10. The director. As a bug. During the Battle of Klendathu and other major action sequences, the actors were firing their weapons at absolutely nothing. The bugs would be added later with CGI. There was no physical reference point for where to aim or how to react. To help the cast visualize the creatures, Paul Verhoeven would run around the set screaming and jumping like a giant insect, waving his arms, making clicking noises with his mouth. Sometimes he held a stick with a crude bug head attached to the end, giving the actors something tangible to look at. It was absurd and undignified, but it worked. The actors' reactions feel genuine because they were responding to their director making a fool of himself. Verhoeven's willingness to embarrass himself for the sake of the film earned him enormous respect from the cast. 11. The fascist cinematographer Jost Vacano, who shot Das Boot and had lived through the Nazi era himself, collaborated with Verhoeven to deliberately light the actors to look like Aryan ideals from 1940s propaganda films. The heroes are all square-jawed, blonde, perfectly groomed, shot in heroic low angles that make them look like superhuman warriors. The lighting is bright, clean, and artificial, giving the entire film a glossy, fascistic sheen that feels deeply wrong if you're paying attention. This wasn't an accident or a stylistic choice made in ignorance. It was a deliberate provocation, a visual argument that said, "This is what propaganda looks like and you're falling for it." Vacano and Verhoeven were both survivors of fascism. They used their craft to create a film that looks seductive and heroic on the surface but is rotten underneath. Most audiences never notice the manipulation. That was the point. 12. CGI that still holds up. Despite being made in 1997, the visual effects in Starship Troopers are still impressive by modern standards. The reason is simple. The production mixed cutting-edge CGI with massive physical miniatures and practical gore effects. Phil Tippett, the legendary effects artist who worked on Jurassic Park, led the CGI team. He insisted on giving the bugs realistic weight and movement instead of making them feel like cartoons. Meanwhile, the practical effects team built full-scale bug parts, gallons of slime and guts, and explosive squibs that covered actors in fake blood and insect viscera. The combination of digital and practical effects gave the bugs a tactile presence that pure CGI often lacks. It's why the film's creature work still feels more real than many modern blockbusters that rely entirely on digital effects. 13. Michael Ironside's hospital visit. The shooting conditions were so grueling that even Michael Ironside, a tough-as-nails veteran character actor who'd been through countless difficult productions, ended up hospitalized during filming. Between the desert heat, the heavy tactical gear, and the physical demands of playing Lieutenant Gene Rashak, Ironside pushed himself to the absolute limit. His body finally gave out. He was treated for exhaustion and dehydration. The production had to adjust the shooting schedule to give him time to recover. Ironside later said it was one of the most physically punishing shoots of his entire career, which is saying something for an actor who spent decades playing military badasses and action heroes. The fact that he nearly killed himself for a supporting role in a bug movie is a testament to his professionalism and Verhoeven's brutal directing style. 14. The missing power armor. One of the biggest complaints from fans of Heinlein's novel was the complete absence of the mobile infantry's iconic powered exoskeleton suits. In the book, these mechanical armor suits are what make the soldiers effective against the bugs. They turn ordinary humans into jumping, rocket-launching super soldiers who can take on entire armies. Paul Verhoeven deliberately cut them from the film for two reasons. First, they were too expensive. Building practical power armor would have consumed a massive portion of the budget. But more importantly, Verhoeven wanted the soldiers to look vulnerable and expendable. Just meat being fed into the grinder of an endless war. The power armor would have made them look heroic and capable, which would have undermined the entire satire. By stripping the soldiers of their technological advantages, Verhoeven forced audiences to see them as cannon fodder. That was exactly the point he was trying to make about militarism and propaganda. So did you catch the satire the first time you watched Starship Troopers? Or were you too busy cheering for the good guys and blowing up bugs? The genius of the film is that it works on multiple levels. You can enjoy it as a dumb action movie, or recognize it as one of the most biting critiques of fascism ever put on screen. Which behind-the-scenes secret shocked you the most? Let me know in the comments. If you want more deep dives into movies that fooled everyone, hit subscribe. See you in the next one. See.